Okay, so the motor leads are soldered on and the truck pickups are soldered. We're leaving the speaker for now because we got to put the second one in. I also forgot to mention the truck pickups. It's a good idea to solder those wires to the brass tabs on the truck pickups as well. So those are inside this connection here. It's a good idea to solder those pickups as well, because they're just, from the factory, they just come as a clip. So you want to solder those before you reassemble the trucks. So now we're at this point, it's a good idea to function test the decoder and make sure that it's not a dud or something from the factory. So I'll put this on the test track and just make sure that it goes forward and back, and you can test the speaker as well because it'll work. Okay guys, so the function test went good. Decoder works well, truck pickups are working, motor leads are working, and the speaker works as well, so that's a good sign. So I can keep going with the install. So the next thing I'm going to do, because I've still got the soldering iron and everything out, I'm going to go ahead and install the resistors for all the LEDs on this locomotive. So this one has 6, so I'm going to go ahead and install 6 resistors because each LED needs its own. And I'll solder them to the square leads, the square tabs on the decoder. I like to use these 1000 ohm quarter watt resistors. I use those and the shrink tubing, and I just solder them directly. I kind of bend them and solder them directly into the tabs. I use the shrink tubing to protect the decoder side because this is a conductor, and I leave the other side bare because I will put another piece of shrink tubing on after, when I'm connecting them to the LED leads. So I'll go ahead and put these on, and then you'll be able to see how I do this. Wiring it up for LEDs is really not hard, guys. All you gotta do is just follow the diagram that Soundtrax provides on the inside of this packaging, and it says, you see I ripped it there, but it says if you're going to use LEDs, follow the diagram below. You basically just follow this wiring diagram and put your resistors in line with that. Really easy, not hard to do. I'm going to go ahead and do that on mine now. Okay guys, so it's done. Really quick process. The color bands on the resistors doesn't matter which way you put them, but I always try to just do it the same to keep it consistent. So I try to cut them, and you don't have to, but it is easier if you try to keep it neat. So I try to keep them, straight to 90, and it just saves you a little bit of hassle later on when you got to pack all the leads and everything into the shell. It's just much easier if you keep your things neat. So 2 for the headlights here. This is the forward direction. You can see the stamped on the decoder there. So we got 2 headlights, 2 ditch lights, and 2 rear headlights here. So now we're done with the soldering iron for a while, so I can shut it off, take my safety glasses off, and move on to the next stage of the install, which is installing the LEDs into the shell as well as the second speaker. So this next step is kind of the most tedious. We'll get our 603 SMDs wired in the ditch light configuration, so that just means the both leads come off 90 degrees to the LED. So we have to go in and glue these into or install them however we can into the locomotive so that they are pointed directly out. This is important, so that they face directly out and shine as bright as possible, because if you have one that's dead on and one that's kind of crooked, they'll look different. So I use CA glue to install these, and I use my helping hand to hold it in position until the glue dries. It's kind of a frustrating and finicky process. First one I'm going to do is the double headlight for the front end. The rear headlight on these Katos is exactly the same, so I'll do it the same way. So the front and rear headlight LEDs are done. These are completed. So you can see just using a little tiny drop of CA glue on a toothpick and using the helping hand to hold it in place while it dries. Both LEDs are installed and the leads run down the back at 90 degrees. The key to this is just taking your time, making sure they're in the correct position and letting them dry. And I let them dry at least a couple hours before I start the next one. That way you never have any problems, you never have to go back and fix one if you let the glue harden completely. Another good thing when you're doing these LEDs is to invest in one of these little LED testers, because it saves you a whole lot of time being able to function test all these LEDs before you go and solder them. So now that those are done, I can go ahead and start the last two, which are the ditch lights, and they get installed in this Kato precast ditch light housings and also handrails attached. So the first thing you need to do is I take my pin vise with a number 54 bit and I just bore these out just a little bit. You can see about that far, and all that does is just squares it up inside, because you see the back side of these are kind of at an angle. So if you put that, if you drill it out, you make sure that the LED can go in there square. So I'll drill those out and then double check, and I can see, you can tell when the LED goes in all the way. So once that's done, do both of them, and the next important thing to do is to paint black on the inside and do 2 coats and let the first coat dry before you do the second one. And I just use acrylic black paint, any kind of paint will work. Black stops that light bleed from coming through these thin plastic ditch light housings. I made a mistake on the first one I did, and I didn't paint black on the inside, and the light bleeds through really badly because these LEDs light actually comes off the back of them as well. So it's always an issue of trying to control the where the light goes. So just like the headlights, you want it coming out, you want the front of the LED, the yellow part, like that, you want that facing perfectly out, because that'll give you the brightest light possible, and you want them the same too. So you want to make sure that one's not halfway down like that, or one is turned sideways a bit, because it'll be a little less bright than the other one. So you want them to kind of be the same. So I'll go ahead and I'll paint my second coat of black, and then it's just a matter of putting a little bit of CA glue on the top of the LED here, maybe a little bit on the back, slide it in, have it dead on, and then leave it and let it dry. And I'm talking a couple hours. It'll save you having to do it again. And if one of these gets messed up, I've had it before where I didn't let it dry and then I was messing around with it. Then I was trying to get it out again and I broke one of the LED leads off. I actually had to drill it out of there because there's no other way, so I wrecked one of the LEDs doing that. So very important, let the glue dry, then go ahead and do the second one. So while we're waiting for the paint to dry in the ditch light castings, I'm going to go ahead and prep the second speaker, which is a Zimo 10 by 15 by 11 mil. So I'm going to make some leads out of the same flexible wire, get those put into place, and they're just little push buttons. You see there on the top, you push those down, slide them in, and then taking the advice of West Coast Rails, I sealed this speaker enclosure with silicone before siliconing it into the hood of the shell, and that's just to ensure that it has a tight fit to the enclosure part here. And you can see it's it doesn't really seem completely solid. So taking West Coast Rails advice, sealed this up with the same silicone I used to install the speaker in the tank. So go ahead and do that and show you what that looks like. So just like that, I just use a toothpick and seal up all the way around the outside of the enclosure. That just guarantees you don't have any leakage and you got a nice solid seal. So now that that's done, we'll get the shell out because I've already got my silicone out and handy. We'll just silicone this right in. They have to go, the speaker has to go behind this peg. Here's these two pegs inside the shell here. The speaker needs to go on that side of them to clear the weights inside the model. Again, really easy, just a dab of the silicone and just press it in. And then leave it, let it dry for a day or whatever, and then come back to it and we'll keep going with the LEDs.